I'm going to be reacting to Fireship's video on Is Coding Dead? I'm a Webflow developer, and being involved in the Webflow space, it is very popular to be on the whole no-code train. However, I'm a proponent of both sides. I'm a proponent on coding and also using no-code tools when it makes sense. But is coding actually dead? Let's react to Fireship's video.
Coding is dead. I've seen this prediction thrown around more and more lately, but will programmers really go extinct anytime soon? It's in my best interest to shill for the learn to code industry on this channel. However, looking into 2023, there are some really bad looking storm clouds on the horizon. In today's video, we'll look at 6 messed up trends that might kill programming once and for all, along with a few shreds of hope at the end. Before we get into it, I'd recommend you sign up for Fireship Pro to learn how to code with a brand new platform I built from scratch that provides an addictive, meme-driven experience. And this might be your last chance to support the channel before coding dies forever. The first trend I want to talk about is stalled technology. Now, normally I bad with the metaverse that I honestly just feel sad at this point. Like, the entire metaverse likely has fewer daily active users than that shitty side project that you totally forgot about.
That is true. It's hilarious how many few users actually are using the metaverse. I mean, I guess we'll have to see if people like it.
Like, they just keep pouring money into this thing, and so far it's been nothing but an embarrassing flop. I'd highly recommend watching.
I will say, when the internet was first coming around and it was brand new, people thought that was a fad and that was a flop. So if VR and this whole metaverse type thing is in the future, I ain't surprised that people think of it like that, but it is kind of funny. Like, who wants to live just like be in that all day right there? Like, everything's super low poly. Like, people don't even like playing games that are that way. I mean, I guess it's just only going to get better, but they have a long ways to go.
This video from Mental Outlaw to learn more about why it sucks so bad. Now, even though the metaverse sucks right now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be a big thing in the future. There are quite a few technologies out there that haven't fully matured to the point where there's a massive demand for new programmers in the field, but have the potential to be huge in the future, like self-driving cars, 3D printing, quantum computing, and augmented reality. And these technologies are great, but they haven't reached their full potential like the smartphone has. And the big question is, will they ever get there? In my opinion, the adoption of these technologies has been pretty disappointing so far. If they never fully mature, that could mean a lot of dead programming jobs. The next trend, which is affecting literally every human being on the planet, is the current economic meltdown. Economists have no idea how this rampant inflation could have possibly happened. It definitely has nothing to do with all that money that was printed the last 10 years. To be fair though, even Nobel Prize winning economists aren't very good at making predictions. Like in 1998, when Paul Krugman thought the internet would have no bigger impact than a fax machine. Now that
See, that's exactly what I was saying. People back then, they thought the internet was just like a complete fad. I actually had an idea for a podcast, and we have the intro all made and everything. And in the podcast intro for every episode, it's going back to clips of people saying like the internet is a fad, like it ain't going nowhere. And then it clips into clips like nowadays where like it's essential for business.
Of control inflation is a reality, central banks are raising interest rates, and that's a big problem for programmers. The vast majority of startups and many publicly traded companies don't make any money. They operate in the red and rely on investors to bankroll their losses until they become profitable or get acquired or go out of business. Higher interest rates make it much harder for venture capital.
By the way, HelloSign just got acquired by Dropbox. It's called Dropbox Sign.
Capitalists to provide easy money for these startups. And that means startups that do raise money have to be far more careful about how they spend it. And one of the biggest expenses for a startup is hiring programmers. As of today, the job market still appears.
This is a huge option, actually one of the things he's covering is this is huge for, or a huge option for like more no code. Like I said in the beginning, I'm a proponent for both code and no code where it makes sense. And one of the companies or one of the industries that we work with a lot is we work with a lot of startups, small startups, and they need a simple marketing sites for either their SaaS product or whatever they're selling, and they don't want to go spend a fortune and have wait a lot of time for someone to go and completely code a custom coded website. We can easily launch these things and ship them much quicker in tools like Webflow, especially when it's just a simple front end. There is no special functionality. It is just a simple marketing site, like a few landing pages. Those are very good opportunities for no code and for things like Webflow. And that's what he's talking about right here. And I can
to be very
understand that
strong on a
firsthand.
macro level. However, just last week there were layoffs at Microsoft. The stock price of Snap collapsed, which means they'll probably have more layoffs. Then you've got Elon talking about firing 75% of Twitter staff. And essentially all of the big tech corporations have started to slow hiring. And that's unlikely to change while their stock prices tank as well. And even the Fed said that unemployment needs to go higher. And you should never fight the Fed. They're the house that controls our casino economy. And speaking of casinos, another problematic trend is the crypto winter. Bitcoin is down 70% from its high of last year. That's not a great look for an inflation hedge. And there's been a variety of disasters that nobody could have ever possibly seen coming in a million years. Like,
for a while there, it was just NFTs, NFTs, NFTs. Every single celebrity was dropping NFTs. It's crazy. Actually, that podcast that I was talking about is NFT related. Like, we haven't launched it yet. Like, all of a sudden the whole market crashed. That isn't why we're not launching it, because I do think NFT technology is a huge part of the future. But this is funny.
The collapse of Luna, Celsius, and Voyager. About a year ago, Web3, or the decentralized web, was trending into the stratosphere. Teenagers were making millions of dollars trading pictures of monkeys, and it looked like Web3 was going to make everything else obsolete by this time this year. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And now you don't really hear about Web3 anymore. Whether you like crypto or not, its decline in popularity for the time being is not a great sign for programming in general. These smart contracts require smart programmers, but if smart people aren't using them, then we've got a problem here. In my opinion, I think Web3 is in the trough of disillusionment, but will continue to improve and grow in the future. An even bigger
Web3 is an option, is a thing where I'm a proponent of like code. Like I said, I'm a proponent of code or no code, depending on where it makes sense. And a lot of the functionalities that these Web3 startups are looking for requires a lot of custom code, especially if you want to integrate features where you're minting directly from your website. There are workarounds where you can have that on like a Webflow site, but usually for things like that, you're wanting to get access to the base code files of your site, and you just can't do that with Webflow. If Webflow ever decides to allow you to get access to your website's files and like your base code, that is going to be a huge game changer. And I know a lot of developers who are going to jump ship to Webflow because it's just going to get so much more powerful.
Threat to the lives of programmers is mo code, no code, and low code.
So, mo, low. And we're molo so. We're low, mo, so, bro.
Programming has kind of evolved.
In the Webflow community, it's hilarious how much people are super fans of no code and low code. There are great opportunities where you can use no code and low code, especially to ship features really quick for companies. However, I don't think it's good, especially if you're a professional in the space, you own a company or whatever. I don't think it's good to only be no code or to only be low code and to not think of anything else or even think of code as an option. That is just like, feels like you're being disillusioned at that point, because at this point in time, you can't just use no code for everything.
Into a blue-collar profession. It's like being a janitor, but with less exercise. Luckily, as of today, it still pays extremely well. That's why boot camps like Bloom Institute of Technology, formerly Lambda School, can offer a job guarantee of $50,000 a year. That's nearly $5,000 more than you would make at McDonald's working for $22 an hour, although they also offer a free McBus pass. The reality, though, is that technology is now replacing many of the lines of code that used to be produced by humans typing into a keyboard. There are tons and tons of tools now that make it possible for non-engineers to create basic applications, websites, and even back-end utilities and databases. On top of that, engineers are now writing code with tools like GitHub Copilot, which move us closer and closer to obsolescence. There are no doubt ambitious people out there foaming at the mouth with the idea of entirely automating your job with AI. The technology's not there yet, but just look at how far it's come in the last year. We now have things like Stable Diffusion and DALL-E and voice cloning that's indistinguishable from the real thing. It's
talking about that DALL-E thing, like this is completely off topic, but there's actually a really cool article you can read by some researchers where they discovered that, I don't know if it was DALL-E or another one of these AIs where you type in some text and then it produces you some art. I think DALL-E was one of them. And all of a sudden, one day, these researchers started noticing that there was gibberish on top of these artworks that these AIs were producing. So they did, and it didn't match in the database for any languages that we know of. So what they did is they copied it and they pasted it like where they would write text, however they did that, and to see what the AI would do in return. And they started getting back images of the certain like pieces of gibberish that they were showing the AI. And it was like the AI was actually creating its own language on its own with no input from a human. It's crazy. Definitely just Google AI DALL-E creates its own language or something like that, and you'll find it was a really cool read.
Only a matter of time, and when that day comes,
it's over. We are screwed.
Next up, we need to talk about social media consolidation, a trend that's been going on for many years now. Tech Lead made a video about this last week, and you can always trust him to tell you the things that you don't want to hear.
And that you think the ability to code is like magic. It's not. We're not wizards.
Nowadays, the vast majority of content creation has been absorbed by platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube that use the follower model for social media. Why is that? Well, it incentivizes creators with money and internet fame at a time when the common person's attention span is lower than ever. Like more than 50% of Americans have not read a book in the last year. This is a problem for developers because people are no longer downloading apps from the App Store every day or randomly surfing the internet to find new content. This makes it extremely difficult to build a new web or mobile app and make a ton of money with it unless you have a massive marketing budget behind it. Like when oil first became a thing, there were all kinds of prospectors becoming overnight millionaires. But nowadays, you have a small handful of companies that control the entire world.
It's like so much easier these days to create a SaaS product or a product online, but there's just so much content and so many great products. It's just increasingly hard to get people to actually want to pay for it.
Bad trend for independent developers because it's much harder to take your side hustle to the moon. Now, the final trend, which has also been going on for years, is the cloud. You have big cloud platforms like AWS that have been aggressively simplifying basically all areas of development, and until recently, that's mainly meant fewer jobs for system administrators and IT guys. But now, there are many tools coming out that eliminate both front-end and back-end jobs, like Honeycode, which is a no-code tool for building web and mobile apps, or Amplify, an entire backend as a service. In addition, you've got a bunch of new startups coming out with next-gen serverless databases that further simplify the role of a backend developer. In other words, as new cloud-based tools make development easier, there's just less code to write. Now, this video may sound very pessimistic, but I think there is hope. You could always get into farming. That's what Bill Gates did after he got sick of coding in C#, and now he's the biggest farmland owner in the United States. Another ray of hope for millennials is that Gen Z seems to be pretty tech illiterate, primarily because that generation is growing up at a time when social media and technology is already very consolidated. Like, I bet many kids these days don't even know how URLs work or that you can even edit them in the browser. And that's good news for old millennial developers.
Actually, it's not just for millennials. I see this all the time with clients. So I said we work with a lot of tech companies and SaaS companies, and sometimes I'll get on the phone with like the marketing director or something of a tech company or a SaaS company, and they have a separate app on the back end, and then they have their front end, and they're hiring us to build their front end in Webflow. And we get to talking, and they don't separate the app and the back end, like the app and the front end, which is Webflow. They don't separate it to them. It's all the same website, and I'll have to show them. No, if you look up it here in the browser or in where your URL is, you can actually see that we're on the front end now, but when we click sign up, if you watch the URL, it's going to switch from domain.com to app.domain.com. It's a completely different website at that point, built with an entirely different tech stack.
Who understand these esoteric technologies. Another piece of good news is that it looks like World War III could start any day now. Instead of being drafted to the front lines, a good programmer will likely be assigned to updating software on drones and missiles, while a good web developer can update CSS on propaganda websites. Now, if that doesn't pan out, I have a lot of faith in the JavaScript ecosystem to create an endless supply of jobs by creating an endless supply of new game-changing frameworks. If the new frameworks can always stay one step ahead of the no-code tools and the AI, then I think our jobs will be safe. Another point when it comes to no code and low code is that this stuff has been around forever. Like Microsoft Excel is a low code tool. In my experience, it's always been a dead end hype train. Even if no code did hypothetically make all engineers obsolete, you would still need someone to code and maintain all those no code tools. Ultimately, when I take a step back and look at the big picture,
that's a big thing right there. You're going to need someone to build these no code and low code tools. Like people who think no code is everything, only use no code tools. Those no code tools aren't being built with no code tools. You get what I'm saying? Like they're actually being coded from scratch. Zapier isn't built on Webflow. Webflow isn't built on Zapier. Like sure, you can create some pretty complex platforms with no code, but these big platforms that are like a driving the no code movement, they're not built using no code. Take Webflow, for example. Sure, there are pages on Webflow that are built in Webflow. However, the actual Webflow platform isn't built in Webflow. It's all custom.
I see this massively complex ecosystem of code and technology that'll be impossible to maintain and push forward without a massive army of skilled programmers. Coding will never be an easy skill, and many real-world systems are so over-engineered that they'll always need highly specialized and highly paid engineers to work on them. And just like our banking system still needs COBOL developers, the reality is that code is just the most efficient way for humans to develop software. There will always be ups and downs in terms of opportunity for coders because of the economy and whatnot. However, it seems highly unlikely that the underlying skill set of writing code can actually be replaced by anything in the near future. All right, that's enough talking. I need to get back to writing some code with GitHub Copilot.
So what do you think? Is coding dead, and is no-code tools the future? Like I said, I'm a proponent of using both where they make sense, and that's my opinion on it. I don't think it's good to be completely one or the other. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have more ideas for content or videos to react to, put them in the comments below. And like I said, I do own a Webflow development agency. So if you do need Webflow development work or consulting, there are links in the description.